Hello and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I will eat your heart.
And I'm Gary. And today we're going to review and discuss The Exorcist. Ian, why don't you give us the synopsis?
Fuck me! Fuck me!
The story follows a little girl called Reagan who lives with her mother in Washington. Reagan's going through some troubling times as a teen. She's bleeding from strange places, growing hair in strange places, and also seems to be possessed by a demon. Reagan's mother tries to seek Reagan some help from local doctors and the likes, but it starts to dawn on the mother that, there's something definitely not right with her daughter. So she seeks professional help from some exorcists, and they come in to try and save Reagan's soul.
This film came out in 1973, and ever since this film's release has become pretty much everyone's most iconic or top-rated horror movie of all time. And that goes without saying that this film is a technical masterpiece.
Yeah.
It is truly compelling cinema. This is one of the, or if not the first horror movie ever to be nominated for an Academy Award. As a matter of fact, it got nominated for 10 Academy Awards at the time, which, has hardly been surpassed in terms of horror being, being well received by audiences or by the Critics Association especially.
Yeah.
And that just goes to show that William Friedkin, who had just come off the back of The French Connection, was literally just churning out fantastic films in the late 60s and early 70s. So much so that there was a lot of fanfare when this film came out as to whether it would even get released, especially considering the sort of volatile content of the film, especially dealing with religion and faith and good and evil, the devil and possession. So much so that it's, at the time this film came out, exorcisms was not cemented in everyone's subconscious. Not everyone knew what an exorcist was or what the procedure was. It was literally, as the characters say in the film, something from, like 400 years ago. No one's ever performed an exorcist. This film, in today's sort of world, has just changed the way we look at horror movies. And there's nothing but a long string of possession films or exorcism films that have poorly imitated this one.
Yeah.
This film as well is also one of the first video nasties. However, it sort of didn't quite get that label in America. It sort of manages to sneak through with an R rating instead of the hard X rating, which they were expecting to get.
I remember the first time I saw The Exorcist, I was at least 15 years old, and I'd already made my way through the Nightmare on Elm Streets and the Friday the 13th. I was even partially, I think, making my way through the Hellraisers. But The Exorcist was just a title that everybody knew, but nobody had ever seen. And it was like that film you had to get a copy of. If somebody said, I've got a copy of The Exorcist, you're like, fuck, man, I've got to come around and watch this shit because, I think I'm good with horror movies. And the first time I watched it, I had actually sat there through the first half of the movie like, really? What the fuck's the big deal of this movie? This doesn't seem to have anything that people were actually scared of. And then when you get to the latter half of the movie, you're like, holy fuck. This is where all the shit goes off. And it was just so brilliantly done. Now that I'm older and obviously watching it again to review it for the show, I think this film is just a fucking beautiful masterpiece. If you take away all of the hardcore scenes that this movie is known for, I'm not going to list them now because obviously we'll discuss them. But if you take away those hardcore scenes, this film has still a presence behind it. The actors do a brilliant job. The special effects team do an amazing job. The director with his camera work. I mean, the opening starts in northern Iraq, and we're following the fucking amazing Max von Sydow playing Father Merrin. And Father Merrin is going around excavating a temple or just doing an archaeological dig. But there's little to no dialogue. There's a bit here and now and again, with people asking him if he wants a drink, and him doing his pills. But there's, like I said, just this opening scene.
It's visual storytelling at its best.
Yeah,
Because, like you said, you don't need the dialogue, and Max von Sydow just sort of carries, his presence on screen is enough.
Yeah.
Because, and what I like is just the weird omens from the moment he sort of finds that demon head statue.
Yeah, yeah.
To the moment where he's sort of struggling with his health and taking pills. The fact that the clock behind him just stops all of a sudden. The ominous statue.
The statue of Pazuzu.
Just opposite him. And, the dogs barking and then fighting each other. It just gives you a very ill, uneasy feeling.
Yeah. You had to build up Merrin. Merrin is only in the beginning and only turns up at the end.
Yes.
But Pazuzu is scared of him.
Well, it's interesting. You're saying Pazuzu now. Now, who is that? Because Pazuzu, I know, is the name of the demon that would possess Reagan.
Yeah.
Because of the sequels to the film and because of the book. Whereas in this film, when she is possessed, they asked her who she is, and she says she's the devil.
Yeah, well,
not Pazuzu.
Yeah, but
at the same time,
that's the ego. Ego of the demon.
Well, yeah, she also tricks them by saying, "I am nothing. It doesn't matter who I am. It's irrelevant."
The demon will lie. But with the fact that this demon has already been exorcised by Merrin once before, and that brings up obviously the prequel and Dominion, exactly the same film.
You are relying on Exorcist, 4 and 5. Well, in order to explain this introduction to The Exorcist.
But actually, what it is it's setting you up to say, look, when you have that shot of the statue, this demonic-looking statue, let's just say we don't know the name of it, but you've got this demonic statue, and you've got this really old priest standing by face to face with each other. I look at that scene, and it says to me, bitch, we have got unfinished business, and we are going to fucking fight at some point, and you are going to have your faith tested, and I'm either going to have your soul or the soul of the person that I'm possessing.
I am no one. I am no one. Fear the priest. Fear the priest.
He actually records that from Reagan and plays it back in reverse, because obviously it's English, but it's in reverse, and plays it back, and the words actually say out, Merrin, fear the priest. So, like I said, Pazuzu is scared of Merrin because he's lost to Merrin before in the past, and we don't know exactly what happens to a demon when it gets sent back, but from my experience with Warhammer 40,000, and the warp and demons and shit like that, when these things get sent back to the nether realm, it's never a good thing. They get hurt. They think they're all immortal. They've got this big massive ego behind them, and then some mortal person comes along with a little vial of water and a little book to read from and fucking casts its fucking ass back to the hell. And like I said, that's what sets me up with the Pazuzu and Merrin shot. Like I said, it's Pazuzu turning to Merrin going, oh, how old are you? You're 80? Man, I'm gonna fuck some shit up for you. Exorcist 2? Yeah, I'm not going to go into that one. But this one, oh my God, she's just... Wow, Linda Blair. Wow. I've only ever seen 2 films with you in. No, 3, technically. 3, sorry. Exorcist, Exorcist 2, and Repossessed with Leslie Nielsen. And she was fucking awesome in that.
That's much better. Hello. I'm Barbara Walters, and this is 2020. I always wanted to do that.
And her mother, played by Ellen Burstyn, they just have such a loving relationship. And it just... It builds up the fact that when the shit kicks off later on, you feel like this... You feel for the mother. Because she wants to save her daughter.
You definitely get an attachment to this, this family, despite the fact that they are uber wealthy, super upper class. She's a very successful actress. So she's got money coming out of her ears. She's got house servants. She's got chauffeurs.
Yeah.
So money is not an issue. But what's happening, though, in their household is that there is a huge family disruption. And it's only very lightly handled in the film. There's only one sequence where it's coming up to her birthday.
Yeah.
And the mother is on the phone trying to get hold of the father just so that he can tell Reagan happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
And so she gets into a tirade and she starts screaming at the operator. And the camera, it's a great shot where the camera just slowly pans all the way back to reveal that Reagan is just sort of
there,
on the corner, just listening to this conversation. And the demonic activity really starts almost the very next day. And the film does sort of try to suggest that what's happening to Reagan is psychological, that she is dealing with the stress of a dysfunctional family.
Yeah.
And and it's sort of there as a throwaway, really, because as an audience, as a modern audience, you're pretty savvy as to what's actually going on.
Yeah, but I mean that's what I always love about shit like that is science versus religion. The doctors, once they get hold of Reagan, they start putting her through all these procedures, spinal stuff and brain x-rays and all that kind of stuff. But they can't find anything wrong with her. So then they kind of just try to usher her off as, maybe she's schizophrenic. Bitch, please, her fucking head is spinning round. She is
no one ever seems to see this happen.
The only people that actually ever see it is the mum and the staff at the home. And this is where sometimes I get the problem with The Exorcist. And it's a problem that I do have with other horror movies that try to not only emulate The Exorcist, but also just make shit up as they fucking go along. The mum is walking around her house. She can hear noises in her attic. This is kind of the first paranormal activity you're getting before Reagan finds a Ouija board. The mother goes up into the attic, starts hearing stuff in the attic, and she turns to her servant and she goes, "Oh, we've got rats." I'm like, fuck you! What kind of fucking rat makes that noise? Rats are fucking little and stealthy. What's in your attic is large and scary.
But like I said, this is a universe. With the characters within this universe have never had the Exorcist film.
Yeah,
and so they've not been brought to attention as to what this could possibly be. So of course, science has been answering all of these mysteries, and so all of those psychological problems are now just being broken down by science and going, well, it's a brain tumor, or it's cancer, or it's this, or it's this.
Yeah.
And so looking for answers, it's with these doctors is probably the right thing to do.
Yeah. Moralistically, it's the right thing.
You wouldn't instantly suspect, yes, demon.
Oh,
it's like you would end up in a different asylum. And so it's for me, the most horrific scenes in the film are Reagan in the hospital when they're performing these operations on her, when they're putting in these needles and there's blood splurting out over herself and on the table.
Yeah.
And just like, that's really, really horrible. A lot of people fainted and were brought out of the cinemas with paramedics on standby at every theatre this film played at.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to note that most of the people were actually brought out of the theatre because of some of the hospital scenes. Not because of the demonic stuff, but because of how well performed those scenes were. And they were actual doctors that were performing those scenes. And so that's why it just adds that extra air of believability next to this documentary-esque style. It can make you incredibly uncomfortable.
That scene where he puts that thing in her neck, I actually sat there when I was making my notes. I was thinking, this film only has two major scenes of blood.
Yes.
One we will get to later on, and this one with the doctor scene, and this one actually has more blood in it than the other scene. And the other scene actually has been cut out of the movie many times, but you left this one in. That's okay. It's crazy that people actually sat there and went, oh yeah, that's science. Let the blood spurt out of her neck. the other stuff is too violent. I'm like, blood's blood, isn't it?
It's these archaic, heavy industry machines that they're wielding across, the noise of it. Yeah, it's just incredibly unsettling. It's horrible.
But like we said, moralistically, the mum wants to help her daughter, and it's only when she's at her limit, when she really has seen enough, that she actually says, I've got to find an exorcist. I think one of the doctors actually brings it up to her and says, look, we've got nothing for you. All the stuff that you say is happening is not happening to us, which I think is quite funny, because obviously that would explain that the demon, is liking playing the games. It's enjoying torturing Reagan and her mother. And like I said, I mean, the mother could have just escaped with Reagan anywhere, but realistically, it's a film. The horror elements are confined into Reagan's bedroom. And that's what makes the movie even more fucking spectacular, is that we complain about a lot of films where they never leave a room. Yet in The Exorcist, you don't want to fucking go in there.
Stop! Make it stop! It's burning!
All right, let's see what keep away! The sour is mine!
Somebody goes, oh, can you take Reagan her pills? I'm like, bitch, no. I'm not fucking going up there unless you give me a gun and a baseball bat.
There are some other sort of weird and unsettling imagery and scenes that lead all the way up to the point of the exorcism as well. And there's a couple of scenes which, kind of meander through the film. For instance, we have the detective who turns up in the film.
Yeah.
And it kind of just, again, feels slightly irrelevant. It just kind of feels like another story that's being shoehorned into The Exorcist.
Well, he's investigating Burke Denning's death.
Yes.
The Burke Dennings is the director of a film that Reagan's mother is starring in during all these events. And we don't actually see his death. His death is actually off camera. But Reagan's mum comes home and she finds out that Burke was left with Reagan alone, and now he's lying at the bottom of a really long flight of fucking stairs, and at this point in the movie you question, did Reagan do it? Mm-hmm. Was the devil doing it? Why was Burke in there? Did she lure him in there? Was he up to no good? Because we've already had a few scenes already with Burke Dennings, and he's a bit of an alcoholic prick.
Yes.
He calls... I love the fucking line. This is one of my favourite lines, actually, is where he turns to the butler, and the butler's from Switzerland, but Burke thinks he's German, and calls him a cunting Hun.
Cunting Hun?
Yeah. A cunting Hun. Wow, that's fucking awesome. I'm going to use that one. But you didn't like Burke. I didn't like Burke. I thought he was a bit of an egotistical prick, or cunting Hun. Sorry. And then when he dies, the Lieutenant Kinderman comes along, and he's investigating death, and he knows that something is up with this family, with Reagan, because this guy's being thrown out the window.
Yeah.
And the only
it was the fact that his neck was also broken and spun all the way around. Which by a force that would not occur after a fall like that.
That's it. And
1 in a million.
I mean, it does kind of work out to the third Exorcist movie.
Yeah, where we would follow the lieutenant and another series of crimes.
Yeah, and so that kind of works. And I think in the book, I mean, I haven't read the book, but I think in the book, he might not be such an intricate character, but it's kind of saying to you, look, the outside world still exists.
Well, for me,
it's coming to knock.
As much as I would say that they kind of just feel like non-essential characters, what they do is just help build the universe or the world this film is set in, which makes it feel more real and more realistic than all the other Hollywood-produced schlocky horror movies, is that this feels real. We also, there's a very peculiar scene in the film which doesn't ever get brought up by any of the other characters, and there's a priest, and he's in his church, and he's putting down his flowers here, He puts down his flowers over there.
Yeah.
And he looks at a statue that has just been decimated.
Yeah.
It's just been...
But, Kinderman does bring that up with Father Karras.
Okay.
He comes to Father Karras to investigate the death of Bert Dennings. And he brings up with Father Karras that in a church, this statue was desecrated. You if you looked into the notes, the statue has been desecrated in the form of Pazuzu.
Yeah.
And so, Lieutenant Kinderman is saying to Father Karras, look, we've got kind of black mass rituals, and we've got this suspicious death. He doesn't openly say it, but you can tell that Lieutenant Kinderman is thinking to himself, this is kind of like that film, The Exorcist. Because I love Lieutenant Kinderman. He's a big movie fan. He's talking about all these films, but he's saying
it just seems really creepy.
Well, detectives do kind of come across to that because they're always poking the situation, forcing it, trying to get all the info to try and solve the crime. But he does bring it up and say, look, this happened in a church. I'm piecing this all together. I think something is up. But that brings me to Father Karras.
Damien. That's a very peculiar name for a priest, I will say.
Was it Dimmy, I think he's, or Dammy?
His mother calls him Demi.
Played by Jason Miller. He is fantabulous in this film. Father Karras, he's at his wit's end.
For me, it's his movie. This is his story.
Him and Reagan. Yeah.
Well, Reagan is a part of his story because Reagan is just there's not much for Reagan to do. She has a couple of scenes, then she's possessed. That's it.
No, what I mean is obviously Reagan possessed Reagan. It's him versus the demon because he's battling his own loss of faith.
This is his story, and like we said at the beginning, this is one of the most notorious horror movies of all time. Yet director William Friedkin always said that he never intended to make a horror movie. That this film was all about the mystery of faith.
Yeah.
And whether, not just priests having faith in religion, but also testing you as an audience. Because when you watch this film, it's going to question your own faith. Do you believe in the afterlife, the spirituality of God and Jesus and demons and devils and angels and all of the like? This film is guaranteed to make you question those things in yourself.
Yeah.
And you'll either have an answer or continue to ponder it well after this film's ended.
It's more than psychiatry, and you know that, Tom. Some of their problems come down to faith, their vocation, the meaning of their lives, and I can't cut it anymore. I need out. I'm unfit. I think I've lost my faith, Tom.
So the story of Father Karras, Damien, is a fascinating discovery in himself because he is a character who wishes to resign his priesthood, and he's not just a normal priest. He is a psychologist for other priests. So other priests would come to him and tell him their problems about their own test of faith, whether their own conviction to the Lord. And so he always assures them and tells them, everything's going to be okay, everything's fine, and yet at the same time he's having his own breakdown.
Yeah.
And it's all interesting to have this confrontation with a demon, whilst he, I guess to reaffirm his faith, if you will, despite the fact that he also doesn't necessarily believe it is a demon. Case in point, when he does turn up and he throws water, not holy water, at Reagan, and she reacts violently to it anyway, and he walks out the door and he's like, it was just normal water.
Yeah.
It's
the way I see that scene is that he's playing a game with the demon, but then is the demon playing a game with him? Because the demon starts to talk to Karras about his mother. And Karras turns around and says, well, if you know this, you should know my mother's maiden name. And the demon is stumped. Well, I don't know if it's stumped or if it's a case of, oh, fuck you. I'm not gonna I'm not going to prove to you that I'm fucking all powerful. I'm just going to let you.
I'm just going to vomit all over you.
I'm going to vomit all over you.
Just a small bit of trivia for you. It was never intended to splash him across the face. It was intended just to hit him in the chest. And so the shot that's in the film is the very first and only shot they did where it hit him in the face. It actually angered the actor a fair bit.
Yeah.
You can see his genuine reaction to having pea soup in the face.
What is it?
A lot of scenes like that. I mean, there's a scene towards the end where the priest, the very last priest who is seeking to get the last rites on Karras, he was fucking pretty much verbally attacked by the director until he was so upset that the director just went, action! So he can walk in it.
Some of the actors were slapped across the face by William Friedkin, the director, and then as soon as the actor would be ready to retaliate, you'd just call action.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing is real reactions and real emotions that William Friedkin brought out of his actors. And a lot of the actors said that they were not acting when they were making this film. They were reacting to what was going on around them, because there's scenes when the actors are being pulled around by invisible pulleys, or invisible forces, and so they are screaming and they are terrified because, they actually took some serious injuries from some of these being yanked around the way that they were, and it does just show on film how scary it looks.
Yeah.
But going back to Father Karras, he has an interesting story where he's also dealing with the loss of his mother. Most of his early scenes involve him sort of looking after his mother, refusing to put her in a home, sort of wanting to make sure that she's okay. And then, of course, she does pass away.
The scene where, because it turns out where she is living in New York and he's living in Washington, and he doesn't want to leave her, but obviously this is where his post is going around, and this is why he's questioning himself, and he wants to resign because he wants to be close to her. The scene where she is taken and put into that kind of asylum ward,
which was an actual asylum with actual inmates in there, because he took a hidden camera.
Oh God, I mean, shit in hell. I mean, like I said, some of the imagery in this film is fucking known to be just crazy, most of the demon stuff. But those few random shots of people just kind of looking out of windows and standing there, that scared me.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, that's what it was kind of like back then. They just kind of shoved all these people into one big room. We've all seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. We know it's all fucking crazy and shit. But it was really emotional for Karras as well, because, he really doesn't want to leave his mother there.
No.
But it's like the brother says to Karras, have you got the money to put her in a private ward? Have you got the thing to do to keep her absolutely safe? No, you're all the way over there. She's all the way here. Somebody has to look after her, and this is the best we could do. And then she passes, and it's just another straw on the camel's back. That you're just like, Karras is really being pushed to the edge, and he needs something to reaffirm his faith. So then when he first walks into that room with Reagan, and I love the first meeting with her, I love the second meeting with her, because he's like, this isn't real, exorcisms and all that. It's like the 16th century. And then you see Reagan like, nah, and you're like, it's like I said this before. I'd walk into that room and be like, that bitch is possessed. Seriously, that's not a cold. She hasn't got a fucking headache. She's possessed by the fucking devil.
Did you do that? Do it again.
In time.
No, now.
In time.
Let's talk about some of the most notorious scenes.
Well, one of the first most notorious scenes for me is just the scene where Reagan just comes down the stairs.
Yeah.
And the mother's got a group of her friends around playing the piano, and they're drinking, and Reagan just comes in, stands there, tells them that they're going to die.
No, she tells an astronaut who's going up into space that he's going to die.
Yep, and then she proceeds to urinate all over the floor.
Yeah.
And it's just...
Wow.
It's just like, okay, you can, from the few scenes we saw of her earlier, where she was happy-go-lucky, it's just like, wow, okay, and now we're seeing this result. And of course, this has also come from the back of the spirit board or the Ouija board scene.
Yeah, yeah.
Which was obviously, the what we would consider the opening, the gateway, if you will, for Pazuzu to come from Iraq to Washington.
He flew. It's like he got an airplane and flew over. I got to be in LA, Washington by 8 o'clock for possession.
I sure hope someone starts playing with the Ouija board.
Yeah, well, I'm never going to get there in time. I think it comes to the fact as well that later on in the later movies, especially in number 2, it turns out that Reagan has kind of a partial psychic ability. And so using the Ouija board and having that, allows the demon to go, right, okay, I'm going to corrupt this soul. The Ouija board stuff, like I said, is now used way too much in horror movies. In this one, it really worked because it was literally like, we got this Ouija board, she's fucking around with it, we're just going to put it away.
Well, for me, it was the very first time I'd ever even seen or heard of a Ouija board and what it's supposed to do was through this movie.
And I've played with them fucking shitloads of times and I'm alright.
Shit.
The spider walk scene. There are a few versions of the movie out there that have this scene in. And a few that actually have it taken out. And it is kind of scary because obviously,
It is fantastic. The practical effect of it. Yeah. Of having this crane, hoisting this actress, this stunt double.
Yeah, yeah.
Who would basically glide down the stairs because she doesn't really make too much contact with the stairs.
No, she just, But
it's just such a captivating image to look at. It's so bizarre and alien and...
But the crazy thing is, I watched the version that doesn't have it in. They've literally just found out that Burke Dennings has been killed, and the mother goes upstairs, finds Reagan in bed, closes the window, comes back down, is all upset that Burke Dennings has been killed, and it fades to black. Where obviously in extended versions, she turns around, she's all upset, and Reagan comes down the stairs and she's spitting blood, or there's another one where she's got like a forked tongue, and it's always the case of less is more. If you've seen the version with this scene in, maybe it makes you more scared that something's going on with Reagan. But I have actually lived with the fact that I've never really seen this scene ever in the film, and so it doesn't bring anything more to me. It kind of takes a bit away actually, because it's kind of like, look, she's fucking insane and possessed, and I'm like, actually, I'd rather see that later on. I'd rather see it happen later on than just have it thrown in my face.
I can understand that, but there was a point of contention with this scene between the writer of the book and the screenplay and the director, with the issue of the director thought that this scene was also too much, too soon in the film, and would rather omit this sequence in order to build the tension a little bit more. Whereas the author was just like, no, the scene needs to go in there to really show and drive home the horror of what is happening to Regan's body. The fact that she has lost control and she has become, a contortionist, if you will. And so, obviously, the scene was cut from the theatrical version and wasn't restored for nearly 20 or 25 years, which, was the director's way of saying sorry to the author, because the two of them were best friends. They were very close friends, and they actually had a falling out over the omission of that sequence in the film.
Well, it's like what you said, though. I mean, the director wasn't ever aiming to make a horror movie.
No.
Where the writer was actually building a horror movie. So, yeah, it works if it's in the version of the film that you've seen. It's the fucking Exorcist. This film is built based on these
I'm going to
scenes.
make another comparison to the book very shortly when I get to the next sequence, which is probably the most horrific sequence in the film, and that is when Regan is masturbating with a crucifix.
Jesus, fuck you! Jesus, fuck you!
It's hard to put into words because the horror of what you're seeing, especially when she grabs her mother's face and puts it between her legs.
Lick me! Lick me!
Lick me! Lick me!
That's disgusting.
And there's blood everywhere. And it's so gross. It is so shocking.
You know what she did, your cunting daughter?
Well, in the book, she brings herself to orgasm with the crucifix.
Yeah, that'd have been too much.
Exactly. There's the stark difference between what happens in the book and what happens in the film. The film really does tone it down, despite the fact that this film broke records in terms of the fact that we'd never seen anything like this in film.
That scene, I mean, I laugh at that scene now because I'm older, you know, and I've seen enough horror movies and special effects that I'm like, yeah, I can see all past that. But to sit there and film it, you know, we need this 12-year-old girl to lie down. We're going to be filming the crucifix scene today. People are going to be like, what? You know, okay, we need you to fucking jam this crucifix or you know, pretend to jam this crucifix in your vagina. We're going to grab this woman's face and shove it between your legs. We're going to fucking, I mean, the mannequin body where the head turns around and shit like that. You're just like, whoa. You know, we've just, you know, everything else in the movie up to maybe this point has just been built up. It's suspenseful. It's fucking awesome. Then you get to this scene, and it's just brilliant filmmaking. You know,
it's you know I'll agree. The first time I watched the film, I was sort of mid-teens, and I thought it was hysterical. I laughed throughout all of these demonic possession sequences, but it's also because the amount of times it's been parodied.
Yeah.
It's been parodied in, you know, the Repossessed and the Scary Movies.
Yeah.
You know, countless other imitation exorcism movies, and so when you come back to this one, you just, like, it's kind of goofy and funny. But now as a more mature sort of audience rewatching the film, if you watch the film in a dark setting on your own and let the film wash over you, immerse yourself into the film, I got goosebumps and I got a weird sense of feelings watching this sequence.
Yeah.
Because of the documentary style nature of the filmmaking, the close-ups, the fantastic character work, the lack of any music, it just makes your hair stand up on the back of your neck.
You know what she did? Your canting daughter?
And then we come to the crux of the movie. Karras has seen enough evidence to get permission from the church for an exorcism. The church calls up Father Merrin from, I think he's in Woodstock, probably smoking a few fucking grass cigarettes and building himself up so that he has to fight Pazuzu again. And you have that fucking iconic shot of Merrin stepping out of the taxi underneath the street lamp. You've got Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells, which we've already heard partially at the beginning of the movie, but now we're getting it, you know, and it's the fucking final battle, you know, good versus evil, and these two priests walk into this room. Amazingly, I love the fact that I think it was filmed in a freezer room.
Well, they set a bunch of fans to cool that room down. It almost snowed in that bedroom. It got so cold because of the breath and everything else. And
poor Linda Blair in just the 90s.
Exactly. Yeah, she complained. It's interesting in interviews. She always says she hates anything refrigerated because that amount of time she spent in just a nightgown, laying on that bed in that refrigerated room. But, you know, the lengths that they went through just to get these special effects and these practical effects to work is nothing short of brilliant. And I just want to shout out now to the special effects team of this film. You have Dick Smith, who was doing the special makeup for this film. And, of course, he would go on to do Death Becomes Her. Nice. So, again, fantastic talent at practical effects.
Yeah.
And we also have Rick Baker, who was also his assistant in this film in one of his earliest special effect work roles. And of course he would go on to do the legendary transformation of American Werewolf in London, amongst other things.
Now laying waste your let your mighty hand cast him out of your servant, Reagan Therese McNeil, so he may no longer hold captive this prison.
The whole end exorcism is just awesomely filmed.
I think it's about 9 minutes in length, and there's hardly any music at all.
They're fucking in on her with stuff from the Bible, the holy water, her floating off of the bed, you know, fucking her standing in front of the Pazuzu statue.
I love the fact that Max von Sydow would say that he forgot his lines of dialogue when recording the sequence because he never expected, being such a British gentleman, to hear such profanity yelled at him. When this little girl tells him to shove his cock up her ass, you can see why he would forget his lines and get flustered all of a sudden.
Stick your cock up her ass, you motherfucking worthless cocksucker.
Be silent.
Yeah, that's actually something we haven't talked about. Reagan's fucking language in this film. I mean, I like to swear, but damn.
Fuck him. Be gone. Fuck him, Karras. From this creature of God.
I definitely want to bring up Mercedes Cambridge, who does all the voice work for Reagan's possession.
Yeah.
And she's an interesting actress in her own right, especially with her backstory. I guess she ended up more dealing with radio than with film and television.
Yeah.
But in order to get the voice, I mean, this wasn't digitally altered in any way. This wasn't studio processed.
Yeah.
The actress, she was kind of an alcoholic, so she drank an excessive amount, smoked an excessive amount, was also then physically restrained into a chair so that she could fight against her restraints while spitting out these lines of dialogue.
La plume de ma tante.
How long are you planning to stay in Reagan?
Until she rots and lies stinking in the earth.
And it just all converges so well in this final scene. Max von Sydow is awesome. Fucking Jason Miller is fucking awesome. Linda Blair, just in the makeup and in the bed, is fucking awesome. The room itself looks fucking crazy. I mean, it's shaking all around. The doors are batching, and I'm like, somebody go outside. I want to see what they see from the outside or here. You know, like we said, Mercedes McCambridge and her voice carrying on. You know, and you kind of feel bad when the ending actually comes. I obviously I don't want to spoil it for those of you who haven't seen this movie, but for those of you who have, I mean, you know what I'm going to say. When one priest passes and the other one whose faith has been tested, you know, takes it upon himself.
He loses his shit.
Oh, mate, he's a fucking boxer.
Pummels the crap out of Reagan.
And then he sacrifices himself by throwing himself down those fucking iconic stairs.
That confused a lot of audiences when it first came out. William Friedkin sort of said that it could have been edited a little bit better to try and show that this was a sacrifice, that he deliberately pulled the demon into himself to sacrifice himself to make sure that Reagan would be fine. Favorite scenes in this film, it's so hard to name any because there are so many iconic visual shots in the film that are just beautiful to look at. I guess the most memorable moment in the entire film, other than Reagan's possession stuff, Damien's dream sequence. He has this bizarre nightmare where he's at the other end of a subway entrance from his mother.
Oh no, he's on a street and she's coming up from the subway.
And she's yelling at him, but they can't hear each other.
Yeah.
And it's just, you know, the way that the sound works, where you can hear the traffic and you sort of hearing the voices and the dreamlike nature of it. Definitely get that nightmare vibe from it. And it's also, I think, the first time that you get the subliminal flashes of the possessed demon of Reagan. And, you know, this was makeup special effects test footage.
It's like with me, I mean, a lot of my favourite scenes do involve Karras. I mean, like you said, the dream sequence in itself stands up. I love Dennings fighting with Carl and calling him a cunting hum. I always think that's pretty sweet. I love the hypnotism sequence where, you know, they're like, I want to talk to the person inside of Reagan right now. And just Linda Blair, just the way she kind of sits there and just stares into the distance. You know, that's kind of what I see hypnotized people look like.
Yeah.
You know, but then all of a sudden, she, you know, Pazuzu kind of makes his presence felt, starts breathing crap out into the room, and then grabs the psychologist, the hypnotist, by his balls, which is pretty fucking awesome. I love Karras' first meeting with Reagan with the vomit, and I love his second meeting where he's recording what she's saying. And then, just the whole final exorcism sequence. I would go on limit and just say this whole fucking film is just absolutely memorable. You know, when you see this film, if you're a first time watcher, this film is going to stick with you. If you have seen this film before and probably seen it multiple times, you probably sit there going, I don't need to go back and watch that.
Why this girl doesn't make sense.
I think the point is to make us despair. To see ourselves as animal and ugly.
I highly recommend The Exorcist. It is a sublime film. If it's not a horror film, then it's one of the most provocative, scariest dramas ever portrayed in cinema. This film, like I said, will test your faith. Whether you're a spiritual person, whether you're an atheist, an agnostic, or whether you're a Christian or a Catholic or whatever, it's going to make you think. And that's because this film is a test of faith. And I can understand that some audiences will find this film hilarious because of the amount of parodies that have followed it.
Yeah.
But I can say now that if you really want to experience this film, again, lights off, volume up, watch it on your own, and it really is an experience unlike other horror films. This film is not only just a great horror film, it is a fucking awesome film in its own right. Fantastic writing, brilliant direction, great editing, superb acting, great use of music, great use of cinematography. It is just a fantastic film to watch, and it rightfully belongs on the top horror movie list of all time.
Yeah, I definitely recommend this movie as well. If you're a horror movie fan, you've already seen this movie. If you haven't, and you've avoided it because, like Gary said, you think it's going to be funny, and you know there's just nothing that the film can bring to you, fucking challenge yourself to watch this movie. I did. I've never regretted it.
Definitely a film you've got to see before you die.
Fuck me! Fuck me!